Romans 9, verses 19 to 21 show us that the kingship of God comes out of his creative activity, or at least it's part of his creative activity. So Romans 9, 19, you will say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his will? Here we have the human argument against the sovereignty of God. If God is in control of everything, how can God, who controls all things, find fault in anything? How can he find fault in you if he's controlling you? If he doesn't want you to do what you're doing, why doesn't he stop you? Because he's the sovereign God. And if he is sovereign over everything, then how can he hold people responsible? And here we have that very basic philosophical problem. How can God be in control? How can he know the future? How can he be the God of predestination and predetermine events and predetermine actions and control actions of free will agents? Now, there is no philosophy that can grasp that, and it shouldn't surprise us, because if we could explain the infinite nature of God with our puny minds and our paltry philosophies, then he would no longer be God. But I stress that because today there is a revival of this kind of free will philosophy that says because there is free will and we are free and morally responsible and God holds us accountable for our actions, therefore God cannot be in control of us. And because he cannot be in control of us, neither is he in control of the world or the events or the circumstances. Only in some great sense, distant and remote sense, does he control, and through his ingenuity manages to engineer situations finally in the end to get his will done. And because philosophically in today's society and in today's philosophical climate, it is totally anathema to think of any form of predeterminism in philosophy. And people can't cope with it. And so they have this kind of democratic God who enters into some kind of open relationship with his creation, is to say, well, we'll just see what the consensus is. And then you challenge them and say, but what about God's will? Is God's will going to be done? Is Christ going to return? Oh yes, eventually. He will come when he's finally managed to work it out. And what they're concerned about is this picture of God as being this cold metaphysical iceberg that doesn't relate to his creation. Well, we have seen the teaching of the Bible that God is not only the transcendent one, the one who goes beyond his universe, he is also the immanent one, the one who is present and active in every part of his creation. And that teaching alone should allay the fears of those people. So instead of this great controlling, predetermined, despotic ruler, which they feel some Christian theologians have put forward, they have now replaced him with this rather weak, but nevertheless highly clever engineering manipulator who manipulates so things happen. He manipulates you around your free will so that he can finally get his will done. And frankly, God is not this cold, impassive, dominant controller. Neither is he this rather weak but nevertheless cunning manipulator. He's not that. He is neither of these things. He is the sovereign God of the universe who nevertheless has the power and ability to control the actions of free will agents without somehow compromising their accountability to him or their moral responsibility or indeed their very free will. God is that big, friends. Now, how does the Apostle Paul tackle those issues that I've just raised? He does it like this. He says, let me read the verse again, Romans 9:19. You will say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his will? Showing that God's will be done. And that God's will is working. In other words, God works all things according to the purpose of his will, as it says in the book of Ephesians. That is not challenged. Paul doesn't turn around and say, well, you've got to understand this. God is trying very hard and he has a problem with you because of your gift of free will, and he's struggling with this, but he'll get there in the end. He doesn't want to compromise your free will, you see. And so he's lost control and handed control over to his free will agents.